Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to dig into something we do, well, basically every day, often without even thinking about it. And yet, it's actually one of the most complex and totally fascinating things humans have ever come up with, writing.
Yeah, it really is. And for this deep dive, we've got a great source to lean on, the Wikipedia article on writing. It gives us a fantastic overview. So our mission, if you like, is to kind of unravel what writing is fundamentally, why we do it, all the ways we use it now, demystify
Hmm.
the different kinds of writing systems out there,
Yeah.
and trace its incredible history. Where did it all begin? Expect some real aha moments, I think. Some surprising stuff about how writing literally builds civilization and, keeps changing.
Okay, so the big one first. What is writing? What are we actually talking about here? The source defines it pretty simply, but it's profound. It's the act of creating a persistent representation of language. hmm So not just marks on a page, right? It needs a system, a set of symbols, the script, and rules for how those symbols map onto a spoken language.
Right, and that connection to spoken language is key. Every written language, well, it comes from a spoken one, but interestingly, not the other way around. Think about it. Most languages spoken today actually don't have a written form, which tells you writing isn't just like a technical thing. It's
Mm.
cognitive, it's social. It involves how we think and how we connect.
Exactly. And the result, whether it's carved in stone, printed, or on your phone screen, that's the text. It's all about making language last, making it durable beyond just the moment you say it.
And that durability, stepping back a bit, is huge. Writing systems aren't languages themselves, right? They're tools.
Yeah.
Tools to encode language so someone else can read it, maybe miles away or, centuries later. Think about sending an email across the world or finding ancient knowledge in a library. Writing just, well, it extends what spoken language can do massively. Plus, it changes how we learn because it lets us externalize our thinking, literally put thoughts down on paper or screen. That makes it way easier to look at them, build on them, rethink them. It's not just memory aid, it fundamentally reshaped like our collective brain power, building knowledge over generations. Almost impossible without writing.
Yeah, that externalizing part is massive. Okay, so if that's the next really fascinating thing is why? Why did humans feel the need to invent this? Historically, it seems it wasn't just a nice extra. It grew out of sheer necessity as societies got bigger, more complex, economically and socially.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once it was invented, its uses just exploded. Tracking goods, keeping records of wealth, writing down histories, preserving culture, coding knowledge to textbooks, religious texts, scientific papers, and for running things. Crucial. Laws, census data, contracts, taxes, trade deals, treaties, it's all written. There's a quote from Charles Bazerman that sums it up nicely. He talks about marking signs on stones, clay, paper, and now digital memories, each more portable and rapidly traveling than the previous provided means for increasingly coordinated and extended action as well as memory across larger groups of people over time and space.
That's not just interesting, that's like the foundation of how we live now. I mean, how do you run an empire without written laws everyone can see? How do you unite people around common beliefs without shared texts? How do you build science without written observations others can check and build on? Writing didn't just help these things, it made them possible. It let societies operate on a scale way beyond human memory or just talking.
And for us, as individuals, the reasons are just as strong, maybe more relatable day to day. I mean, writing helps us get around our own memory limits. Think about your to-do list, right?
Mm.
Or a recipe, or instructions for putting furniture together. It's also vital for sharing ideas, essays, manifestos, whatever, for creativity, storytelling, keeping up with friends through letters or emails, and of course, personal stuff like diaries.
So it's both this huge societal infrastructure and a really personal tool for thinking and connecting. And the source really emphasizes that now, in the digital age, writing isn't fading away. If anything, it's more central. Email, social media, it's woven into daily life now, often right alongside, good old pen and paper.
That's totally right. A huge amount of everyday writing happens in most workplaces, certainly in developed countries. For lots of jobs, law, accounting, software development, HR writing isn't just part of the job. It basically is the job. Written documents are the main output. Even in jobs you might not think of as writing jobs, there's usually some record keeping, some emails. Most people write at least a bit at work.
Let's maybe look at a few specific areas today, because once you start noticing, it really is everywhere, like business and finance.
Oh, completely. Writing is everywhere in commerce. A simple example. A wholesaler gets a written request, sends out work orders, confirms shipping by email, writes an invoice, needs a signature. It's all text.
Yeah.
And on a bigger scale, modern finance, banking. It runs entirely on written rules, policies, reports, records, communications. Financial institutions rely heavily on written, well, now mostly digital records for everything. Their integrity depends on it.
Okay, and what about government and law?
Well, written constitutions are the blueprint for modern governments, right? Then you've got written rules for every department. Laws are drafted in writing by legislatures. The executive branch issues written regulations. Plus, governments keep written records on all of us: ID, births, deaths, licenses, taxes, criminal records. It's the invisible scaffolding holding society together.
Right, and science and scholarship. Seems obvious, but maybe break that down.
Yet, research is almost always published in writing, articles, books. Arguments, experiments, data, all presented in writing. Getting funding means writing grant proposals. Data is recorded in lab notebooks. Drafts or preprints are shared in writing for feedback. And peer review. That's fundamentally a written conversation that decides what gets published. For a finding to become accepted knowledge, it needs to show up in review articles, textbooks, get cited by others. That whole process relies entirely on writing.
Which brings us to journalism. News reporting, mostly written, so central for, people staying informed in a democracy. Obviously, newspapers were huge for centuries. Now the whole industry is facing massive changes with how news is made and paid for online. New challenges, new ethical questions too, and then education.
Education. Yeah, formal schooling, from kindergarten right up to PhDs, is deeply tied to writing. Students read textbooks, they write constantly: exams, essays, notes, homework. And a lot of that writing isn't just about learning to write, it's how you learn the subject. Writing becomes a tool for actually understanding and absorbing the material.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why, but maybe the most mind-bending part is the how. The sheer cleverness behind the different ways humans figured out how to capture language. Let's get into the different writing systems. It's amazing how many approaches there are.
Yeah, it really is ingenious. Broadly, we classify them by what units of language the symbols stand for. So first you have phonographies. These systems represent sounds, and they break down into two main types: alphabets, where symbols stand for individual sounds, or phonemes like the P and B sounds, making pat different from bat, and syllabaries, where each symbol represents a whole syllable.
Okay, and the other main type?
That's logographies. These use symbols to represent units of meaning, whole words, or meaningful parts of words, called morphemes. The big one still used today is Chinese characters, right, which are also used in Japanese, with adaptations. Historically, you had things like cuneiform and Maya script too. What's neat about many logograms is they can actually contain clues about both the sound and the meaning within the symbol itself. They're quite rich.
Right. And syllabaries, again, symbols for syllables, usually like a consonant plus a vowel or maybe just a vowel sound.
Exactly. They work best for languages that have relatively simple syllable structures, like Japanese. You also mentioned Linear B from ancient Greece, and the Cherokee syllabary is another example. The key thing is, in a syllabary, syllables that sound similar phonetically, like ka and ki, are usually written with completely different unrelated symbols. Each syllable gets its own unique sign.
Gotcha. Which brings us to alphabets. Sets of symbols for both consonants and vowels. Ideally, one letter, one sound. But as anyone who speaks English knows, practice is often messier than theory.
Definitely. And even within alphabets, there are variations. You have abjads, sometimes called consonantaries. These systems basically only have letters for consonants. The earliest alphabets were actually abjads, likely influenced by Egyptian writing. Most are found in the Middle East, which kind of reflects how Semitic languages work, with less crucial vowel variation. It's like writing BK for book. The reader figures out the vowels from context. That's roughly an abjad. Then there are abugidas. You see these a lot in India and Southeast Asia. Here, vowels aren't separate letters. Instead, they're shown by little marks, diacritics, attached to the consonant symbol, or by slightly changing the consonant symbol's shape. So you might have a base symbol for ka, and a little tick or dot turns it into ki or ku. It's clever.
This is where the history gets really wild. Writing didn't just pop up everywhere at once. It seems to have first emerged in the early Bronze Age, specifically in Sumeria, in southern Mesopotamia, and the driver, purely practical needs. Trade and administration just got too complicated for memory alone. Sumerian cuneiform became the reliable way to track everything.
Right. Both Sumerian cuneiform and Egyptian hieroglyphs seem to have developed out of earlier, simpler proto-writing systems, somewhere between 3500 and 2900 BC. The first text we can really read date to around 2600 BC. In Mesopotamia, there's this fascinating theory by Denise Schmatt-Besserat connecting cuneiform back to little clay tokens used for counting goods, maybe as early as 8000 BC. These tokens gradually led to pressing symbols onto clay. then drawing them, then adding marks for quantity, eventually evolving into those distinct wedge shapes of cuneiform.
Wow, so those little clay balls were like the ancestors of spreadsheets. That's amazing. By about 2700 BC, cuneiform could represent syllables of spoken Sumerian. It became a full system, logograms, syllables, numbers, and it was so successful it got adapted for other languages like Akkadian, Hittite. And incredibly, the last known cuneiform texts are from the 1st century AD. It lasted for millennia.
Meanwhile, in Egypt, the earliest hieroglyphs we know of are from around the 33rd century BC. It was mainly logographic, picture-like symbols for words, but it also cleverly used some symbols phonetically, almost like an alphabet for certain sounds. Writing was super important for running the Egyptian empire, but literacy was kept within a small group of elite scribes. Hieroglyphs were complex, hard to learn.
Okay, now here's a point that just stops you in your tracks. Alphabetic writing, the kind most of us use. It seems it was only invented once in all of human history. Think about all the different ways people found to write things down, but only one group stumbled upon the truly efficient way to represent individual sounds. It really highlights what a massive cognitive leap that was, and it explains why that system unlocked widespread literacy like nothing else before.
Exactly. It happened around the mid-19th century BC, we think. The Proto-Sinaitic script. It emerged among Canaanite workers, possibly turquoise miners, in the Sinai Peninsula. We found about 30 inscriptions, quite crude, with symbols representing single consonant sounds. That's the absolute core idea of an alphabet. It took a while to catch on, though widespread use seems to start between the 12th and 9th centuries BC.
And from that single origin.
From there, the Phoenician alphabet developed directly from Proto-Sinaitic around 1050 BC. It was an abjad, remember, just consonants. Then came the real game changer for the West. The Greeks adapted the Phoenician alphabet around 800 BC, their big innovation, using some leftover Phoenician consonant symbols to consistently represent vowel sounds. That was it. That changed everything.
And from Greek.
Well, one version of the Greek alphabet, the Cumae alphabet, led to the Etruscan alphabet. And from there, eventually, to the Latin alphabet that we're using right now to communicate this. Other branches from Greek include Cyrillic, used for Russian and other Slavic languages. And going back to Phoenician, it also gave rise to the Aramaic script, which is the ancestor of both Hebrew and Arabic scripts. It's this incredible interconnected family tree spreading across the globe.
We should probably give a quick nod to other key developments too, like in Mesoamerica.
Right, the Maya script. It's the best developed, the only fully deciphered system from before Columbus. Dates back to the 3rd century BC. It used a really interesting mix of logograms and symbols for syllables. And in China, the earliest writing we have is from around 1200 BC, found on oracle bones used for divination. Also, in Iran, another very early system, Proto-Elamite, popped up around 3200 BC, probably influenced by early Mesopotamian proto-cuneiform.
And we mentioned religious text earlier. Their role seems pretty significant too.
Definitely. In many cultures, religious texts were among the very first things written down widely, sometimes the only things written in a particular language for a long time. And many are still incredibly popular today. It just shows writing's power to unify beliefs and communities over centuries.
So we've really covered a lot of ground. From the basic idea of making language permanent to all the reasons we do it societal, personal, it's absolute ubiquity today, especially in work. Then the incredible variety of systems people invented, and finally tracing that amazing journey back to its ancient roots, particularly that single invention of the alphabet. It just hammers home how fundamental writing is even when we don't notice it, from, our grocery lists all the way up to global finance.
So what's the big takeaway here for you listening? I think it's that writing allows us to, again, externalize our thinking, to transmit knowledge across time and space in a way that truly extends the human mind. And that single invention of the alphabet, its impact in just spreading ideas and knowledge far and wide, you really can't overstate it. Which leaves us with a maybe provocative thought. Most spoken languages aren't written down, even today. So what does the act of creating a persistent representation of language actually change about a society? About how individuals think, remember, connect? Try to imagine a world completely without writing. What gets lost? What kinds of knowledge? What connections? What collective memory just wouldn't exist?
That's a really powerful question to ponder. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring this incredible, truly world-shaping human invention on your own.